Hello, I'm BX Toycat and welcome back to another top 5 video. Today we're going through the top 5 worst PS4 games of all time. The way we're doing this is by using Metacritic's big aggregation function, where they track over 450 games and they add up the reviews for all of them, and they kind of give you an average score to let you know what people generally think about it. This means we can sort this average score and see what the best games of all time are, or like today's video, check out the worst games. So hopefully you do all enjoy the video. If you do, please do like it and let me know, because it helps out the channel a lot and lets me know you do like terrible things. And these are terrible things I think we can all get behind as being pretty darn bad, because the fifth game on here, so the best of the worst, I guess, is Flustercluck. So Flustercluck has a 37 Metascore, which is pretty high apparently compared to the rest of these, but as you all know, that means that all the reviews average come at 37, which is pretty low, and actually has an okay user score and even a single positive review. That is the best on this entire list. And if you actually look at the game itself, you can kind of see some of the positive elements. Like, it's a twin-stick shooter, in case you're curious. It's local multiplayer, which was a bizarre choice, and it actually has a really nice art style. So what lets this game down? Why is it number 5 worst PS4 game of all time? So bear in mind that this game is local multiplayer only. In the age of the PS4 and the Xbox One, which is probably the most online connected generation ever, with the exception of maybe the Wii U, they decided to release this local multiplayer game, and then they decided to release a slightly kind of poor, slightly lacking in gameplay local multiplayer game that, as you can see, has a kind of cool art style, kind of coolish concept where you collect animals and you put them in the pods and stuff. But the reality behind it is it just isn't the most fun thing to play. Most people that play it are like, well, I kind of like this, and I guess some of the reviews can really sum this up. When you read stuff like, even the second best review on this is like, well, if you have friends around that are kind of bored that might want to play this, if you don't have an internet connection, and if you have some time to waste, you might like this. And I don't know about you, but it's not the biggest selling point for a game when its biggest fan is saying, well, if you don't have an internet connection, if you have friends around anywhere and you've got time to kill, this is great. Personally, I have slightly higher aspirations for games than that, and that is why this is one of the worst PS4 games ever. And I guess the easiest way to sum it up is with another review, which says, if I was to walk up to someone and say, have you played Flustercluck? I'd get the strange eye, which sums up my thoughts on the game in general. So yeah, that is, the Flustercluck, the 5th worst game of all time. Let's move on to the 4th one here, which is one I was so surprised wasn't higher up because of how hated it is almost universally, but it's actually Tony Hawk Pro Skater 5. So this game, as you can see, not a single positive review, 5 kind of mixed ones, and 38 negative, as well as a user score of just 1.5, the lowest on this whole thing, because people hate this game. And personally, I feel like I should fall into that category, because I was so excited for Tony Hawk Pro Skater 5. When they announced they were bringing it back, I was just like, heck yeah, that's going to be a thing. And just bear in mind, the gameplay we're watching here is actually from the trailer. This is the official trailer from the game. This is what they want to, show us, in its best light. And you can see, even in this, best of its lights, you can still see it looks very clunky. It doesn't look anywhere near as smooth or as good as the old games. And you can see a lot of the tricks just don't seem to make sense. And it feels almost like you're gliding a lot of things. It's a very bizarre look that you can see. And the game feels a lot worse. It feels a lot less responsive. But that's not even the bad bit. That's not even the big reason why people hate this game. It's an unresponsive, unmemorable, not particularly great Tony Hawk game. But why is it the 4th worst game of all time on the PS4? The reason for that is because of the bugs. This game released in such a buggy state, it really makes me question how it managed to pass the certification processes on all the consoles it's on, because it's just known as one of the most buggy times of all time. And I guess the easiest way to kind of summarize this is with a review from Cheat Code Central here, which just says, avoid this one like the Black Plague. And again, that's like the 4th most positive review here. It all goes downhill from there with a bunch of 0 scores from both users and critics alike. Very few defenders for this game, because, I mean, if you really like Tony Hawk Pro Skater, or if you like the Tony Hawk games like I did, honestly, I think it's just better to go back in time and not even go back in time, but just to go back to get, an Xbox original game for Underground or Underground 2, and you'll probably have a bunch more fun with that than you ever will with this. So yeah, that is Tony Hawk Pro Skater 5, the 4th worst game of all time. But of course, there are 3 more worse games than this, and the next one is actually Air Conflicts Vietnam Edition. So this one has a 30 Metascore, not a single even mixed review, and a 1.9 user score. So what did the game do to deserve this? So just looking at it, as you can see right here, the game doesn't look very good at all. It looks like an Xbox 360 game if you're being really, really, positive the whole thing, a tier above Wii maybe. Basically, it's a very, very poor looking game, and it runs pretty poorly. The frame rate isn't solid in the whole thing, and this just makes you question exactly what's to do with that. And you might think, okay, well, if I really like my Vietnam war-based shooters, then I'm not going to care about that, right? Well, the thing about it, the game also has a bunch of other flaws, such as, criticisms of being incomplete, but also a lack of really usable controls. So bear in mind, it's a bad-looking game that controls bad, that has a terrible storyline, that doesn't really have too much length to it, that cost full price when it came out, and just all those things together make it combined for one of the games that most hated by people, because again, maybe you could justify this as like a $10, like, I want to play a flight sim that's Vietnam themed, I guess I'm going to have to play this one, but as a full price game, there are just very few reasons to justify it, and one of the most positive reviews I could find this game was, we suppose the studio should be commended for its efforts, but when the results of this laugh be bland, maybe you should consider walking before trying to fly. And then there's, this is a good game that it's a game that cannot justify its own existence. It's got a few clever ideas, but doesn't have the scope or the budget to threaten any of the amazing flight sims for a fraction of the cost. And when you just, combine all these terrible things together, you just realize, you know what, this is a game I don't think I'm ever going to pick up, and that's the summary I've got from this, at least. Hopefully nobody out there owns this game. If you do, I feel very sorry for you, but not as sorry as if you own Basement Crawl. So this is a kind of like arcade game for the PS4, and the basic idea behind this one, I think it's very clear from watching it, it's a Bomberman ripoff, but it's a Bomberman ripoff minus a lot of the cool elements of Bomberman. So again, if you've never played Bomberman, just in case you're curious, you place mines, those mines destroy boxes, you also want to kill people with the mines, and so therefore the further along you go, the more open the field gets, and it's kind of a challenge, because it's a little bit more, there's like 6 people going around there, and it's kind of a cool thing. So yeah, it's Bomberman, but on the PS4, that's kind of cool, right? Well, it's Bomberman with this really dark art style, which could be a cool idea, but as you can see, it's just too dark to really even properly see what's going on. But even if you look past that, if you really want Bomberman, but with this super weird art style and without a lot of power-ups and the cool features from Bomberman, then why would this game not suffice to you? So, although it does fix the problem that Plus the Clock had, where it is online multiplayer, even when this game was active, and bear in mind this game came out in 2014, so that's definitely not the case anymore, but even when this game was active, it was still around and being played by a lot of people, it had crippling multiplayer issues. Like, the connections just would very rarely work, it would just disconnect people randomly in games, and for the most part, this game just had so many flaws, too many to justify, and that's why it's the second worst game of all time, with just a 27 Metascore, a 2.5 user score, and generally hated by everyone. It has a single mixed review, and the rest from everyone else is just entirely negative, and that's why this game isn't the best of things. I mean, honestly, like, even the people that love the most still admit it's broken in so many ways, because again, it's buggy, it's unfinished in a lot of ways, it doesn't really work in online multiplayer, which is what you might want from this, and it is just a worse ripoff of the game it's going for, which means if you wanted Bomberman on the PS4 and this is the only option you have, maybe it's worthwhile if you play it in local multiplayer and you're willing to forgive bugs, but unless that really, really specific chain of things applies to you, it's not too great. And again, somehow with a single review, there's even if the team behind it managed to fix every single issue in the game, it's still a conceptual mess that doesn't even work. And yeah, pretty scathing criticism from everyone, a bunch of 20s across the board. Basically, people don't like this game, and they have pretty good reasons, as you hopefully saw from the background there. So let's move on to the final game here. What is the worst game of all time on the PS4? So obviously the nature of most games on this list mean they're so bad that you haven't even been exposed to them properly, but this one is one that might be an exception, and in case you do know the title, it is Afro Samurai 2 Revenge of Kuma Volume 1. So this was the first volume of what was going to be a trilogy. Spoiler alert, that didn't really go to plan, and basically this cost $14 for the single game, or it cost basically a full price if you wanted the whole bundle. So yeah, what was so bad about this game? Well, the Metascore is a good place to start. 21 Metascore, not a single positive or even mixed review, and then a 2.5 user score. Again, not a single positive or mixed review in there, all negative in some form, just, varying degrees of negative. Like, you get the 35 negative where someone says it's an utter disaster, and then you get the 10 score for negative where someone says this makes me sad, it makes me sad even looking at the game, and I think that really is a good way to sum up the game. So again, this game has everything wrong with it that you could possibly hope for. First of all, it's a trilogy of a game, so it's kind of cut up content in that way, which is kind of a bummer, but even if we just look past that, let's just say this is a full game by itself. First of all, it has terrible mechanics. You can see even in this kind of scene right here, like there's bizarre cutscenes where you have to crawl through them. Second of all, the game doesn't actually run very well at all. It runs with a terrible frame rate whenever there's an action sequence. It slows stuff down because there's too much on screen. The game runs with appalling looking graphics. Like, this looks like a terrible game. It has a terrible story. It's got way too much just needless violence, nudity, all that sort of stuff, which again, it's not necessarily a problem, but when it's forced nudity and problem, it seems to be a very negative thing for a lot of people. And I think a really cool way to sum this up is with another title from another review, which is just save your money. Just really, everyone looks at this game, and the key point anyone has to tell you whenever they say anything about this game is just don't buy it. So this game was so bad in every aspect, the way they tried to sell it, the actual gameplay, the way the gameplay does run, the way the gameplay does look when it is running, and all these single things, it was so bad that they actually decided not only to cancel the trilogy and stop making the other two versions, but they also decided to pull this version from anywhere. So if you want to play the worst game or PS4 game of all time, it is an extremely tricky task because this reflects so poorly on them as developers and publishers. They tried as hard as they could to get it out there, and that's just a funny thing to me. And also bear in mind, this wasn't a launch title where they just had to rush it. This released on September 22nd of 2015, which makes it even worse. They had time to make this, and then they still made this, and that's the kind of a good summary there. So I hope you did all enjoy today's bizarre top 5 video. If you did, please do like it and let me know. Let me know if you want to see more kind of stuff like this. Share if you really liked it, and subscribe if you are new around here. I make videos like this one every single day on my channel, and if subscribed, you'll see them daily on your homepage. Thank you all very much for watching. I kind of like this once a week talk about something else, you know, the consoles or like different games and stuff. Let me know if you do in the comments. But yeah, besides that, goodbye everyone.